Reverend Rowan Astra and Hauns Olo. How are you guys? I don't think I've seen. We haven't seen talked to each other in person since like Satan Con Scottsdale. I don't think.
Yep.
Is that about right? Yeah. So what's going on with the both of you? I know we've got a lot of stuff to get to, in terms of uh, West of the Mississippi politics.
Right.
What's going on in Idaho? Talk to me.
Where do we start?
Right. Well, right now, a representative of ours just accused cannibalism of being satanic. And they're
Yeah, I
trying
saw
to,
something about that in the news today.
yeah. So they're trying to expand the definition of cannibalism to include human composting, which weird and a waste of time to even expand upon that, but whatever. And in
That's
a tweet,
anything that's not a Christian burial is now
right,
satanic.
right. In a tweet that she has me blocked on Twitter as well, which is illegal.
Oh,
So
I
that's
saw
fun.
that too. She told you that you should follow her other account.
Which is a
Uh,
clearly a dead account that hasn't even been updated
Hasn't
since
posted since
2019.
2019. Hmm.
Like, no, we're not playing this game. I know exactly what your real account is, and it's the one that even specifies your representative. Like, get over it. So other than that madness, I don't know, just work and watching the oncoming, or I should say intensifying of the satanic panic brew storm. Because it's always
Well,
been
I know that
there.
there's. Hang on, I know I was running late today, but I did open a whole lot of tabs on my phone in prep. So let me get
You're good.
those. Okay, so let's see. There's something going on. There's a new library bill that is going on up there that needs
Right,
to be kept track of. Apparently that there was two different bills and they kind of merged into one bill,
right.
and it's all about making it well, making lives harder for librarians who are already doing enough work as it is.
Yep.
But basically, so the new bill, the way from what I read, and I couldn't find an actual bill number for it. So if you have that, let me know. But
Yeah.
because there were the two old bills, and both of them I could find numbers for, but the new merged kind of thing I couldn't yet. But that just came out today, so reporting.
Right.
But my understanding is that basically there's now going to be like this whole process where if any parent finds anything objectionable, all the libraries have to put together this three-member panel who review the book and then decide to, kind of move it into the back, into the adult section, or uh, if the review panel finds that the book is fine, then they can take it as far as the the actual library board or actually sue the library, right? And this is all just an attempt to keep stuff like Lady Chatterley's Lover from reaching the unfortunate hands of 17-year-olds. Or
Right.
And really, the library bill itself, it's just the Idaho legislature likes to do things that are incremental. So one year they'll pass one little piece of legislation, and the next year they'll tack onto it. So like, for instance, the SR 71, I believe it was, that was outlawing gender affirmation treatment for minors.
Mhm.
That bill actually started out like 5 years ago as it was Sharia law panic bill, basically. Like, they passed this bill as a panic bill to prevent female genital mutilation, is what they said it was.
Mhm.
So when they went to go pass SR 71, they just tacked that onto that already existing gender mutilation bill. So that's what they've been doing for the past 5, 6 years now, since the hostile takeover of the Idaho legislature. I mean, I could run your show for hours explaining to you the history with Idaho and its legislature, but I mean the demographic of Idaho really started to change about 12 years ago when they broadcast Idaho as being the #1 place to live if you were a Republican. So what that started was this giant slide of people coming from California.
Yeah, this kind of Great American Readout thing.
Yeah, the readout, exactly. And the readout's been a thing for 30 years, back in the days of Ruby Ridge and stuff. That's why everyone was there when it was the Aryan Nations compounds and all of that stuff. The readout was always a thing, but now they've made it to where it's not just a readout. They've rebranded it as, you live in California, you're tired of seeing homelessness, you're tired of seeing drugs, come to Idaho where everything's cheaper. And as they came up here, the price of housing skyrocketed. We started having more homeless, and all these problems have compounded. And now what's happened is that these people have come from California and they're willing to vote for anybody that has an R beside their name. And if the R stands beside their name, when you get up north into counties that only have 300 people and 2 representatives, all of a sudden the 2 craziest QAnon people that live in your little tiny town are your representatives. And they come down here and they're able to influence decisions and I mean, really put their delusions onto the people.
Yeah, well, I mean, we definitely see some of that down here in Arizona too. Even though I
Yep.
mean, it's Arizona has been moving kind of progressively leftward
Mhm.
as the population increases, but there's definitely still stuff like that when you look up north.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Winslow. You get down into Cochise County, down by
yeah,
Tombstone, Sierra
Winslow,
Vista.
Strawberry, like Happy
Yeah,
Jack, all those places, and
yep.
that's where you said that just this morning uh, they had their committee meeting in our state legislature on the bill to ban satanic monuments and stuff, or letting any of our people put up I mean, it's basically kind of an offshoot of the Idaho thing where they want to kind of preemptively stop any DSD people from getting any ideas about putting something up next to the nativity is what it feels like to me.
Mhm.
Right.
And you saw TSD people speaking at that. They're troopers. They did a wonderful job. uh
Christoph did amazing. That
Right.
was, yeah.
Christoph did great.
I
Yeah,
messaged Christoph this morning just to, yeah,
so did
amazing.
I.
Yeah. It takes
Yeah.
a lot of guts. Like Rowan was able to step into it just as easily. I mean, we got forced doxxed basically, and our names were out there. But in order for us to stand up against these types of bills and stuff, like they're going to force us to come out of the shadows with our real names and everything else. And it's not for everyone. I can tell you, like the death threats and everything else that we field. I mean, it's one thing to hail crow Satan and sit back and make cool doilies and everything, but like when it comes to testifying, like when you wake up in the morning and there's somebody threatening sexual violence on your children and your partner and everybody else, some Nazi, you know what I mean? Like it's a totally different feeling. And sadly, it's what it's going to take. Like we're going to have to stand up to this. If not, they're going to run all over, not just us. I mean, they're coming for the Mormons. They're coming for the Catholics. They're coming. If you're not white and Christian, they're coming for you. Plain and simple.
Well, one of the things about being out here in Mesa is like there is a weird sympathy with the Mormons because they understand what it's like to be lowest guy on the totem pole.
Right.
And yeah,
Joseph Smith was
so
executed and they were ran out of Nauvoo. They had to go through the most desolate country, like parts of this country, to get to the Great Salt Lake, and they couldn't even drink it when they got there. Like they've been through some shit.
so what have you two been working on? I know, Rowan, that I've seen you at a whole lot of protest stuff.
Right.
So talk to me about what your activism has been entailing in the last
Um,
year and a half.
right. So Hans and I started Satanic Idaho, which we kind of consider a satanic collective of like anybody who identifies as a Satanist, whether it's religiously, whether it's quote like kind of politically, people that are TST members, people that follow TST values, people that maybe blend like a little bit of the COS values and you know what I mean? But in the end, it's to
So
basically
kind of like a satanic San Francisco.
Kinda, yeah, exactly. Satanic Bay
we
Area
have
kinda.
TST members, but
Right,
we're not exclusively TSD. Yeah.
exactly. And it's not, to be out there and be like anti-TST either, as I'm sure hopefully a lot of people have seen. It's just we're here to focus on Idaho, right? Because it's a lot. It's a lot to have to like monitor this stuff and like the specific bills and everything else. And thankfully, I feel like um certain like kind of acquaintances like Hemet have been really beneficial because he sees the value in non-theistic Satanists, which is nice. And not just
Yeah,
as a
that's well,
joke.
that's it's him and Meta from Friendly Atheist, for people who don't know.
Oh,
But
yeah. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've known him at a long time too. He's been on
Right,
this show, and we work together at Pathos and Only Sky and stuff. And
right,
he's yeah, he gets it.
right, like, and it's nice to have to not necessarily explain to someone that no, it's not like a joke thing. There's a little bit of like jokey element to Satanism, but that's part of the fun of it, right? Like,
Yeah, well,
but it
I feel that's like trauma response by making a joke out of it.
right,
Like this thing that happened in Arizona this morning. One of the first things that the state senator who was pushing the bill said was just like, well, Satanism is not a real religion. It's just like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. We've been here. We've been over this. We've been over this in the Arizona courts.
Like, no matter how many times you explain to him what Satanism is, he's still going to revert back to that. Satanism is universally known as anti-Christian.
oh my
Like,
god.
Right,
universally
and
where? Like, in what
right,
universe?
and it's that othering of Satanism is what I say it is. Never mind that you're the Satanist telling me what it is. What you say it is a lie because you're Satanist and Satan is a liar. And you're just kind of stop, man. Like we should be past this by now.
And I feel like the bills in Arizona and Iowa are definitely reflections of like I think these legislation bodies are definitely tired of like in their minds being made fools of because most people realize now that it isn't necessarily for plurality that they're pushing religious displays, it's for Christian displays. And now they're being shown that no, you're going to respect the Constitution, you're going to respect religious plurality and allow other religious groups, no matter how much they might offend your sensibilities or your particular belief system. And I think, but what's funnier to me is I'm kind of hoping Idaho introduces something like that. Like, because I'll be doing a ritual outside the committee meeting, like straight up. You know what I mean? I will be in their freaking face and just it's so silly to me because it ends up being such a waste of taxpayer time and money in the end. Like,
Well,
they're gonna get
yeah.
sued.
I am hard pressed to think that this thing that they're trying to push through Arizona right now is actually going to pass because we do have a Democratic governor. I don't think she'd be dumb enough to sign it.
Right?
Uh, but maybe somehow because it's an election year, she like might maybe think that, but she's got to know. Like she's got to
Right.
know after everything that Arizona's been through with TST that like yeah, if you pass this,
Right.
there's going to be a lawsuit. Like it'd be silly
Right.
to think otherwise.
And so in the end, then it's even more of a slap in the face to constituents because it is a waste of time. It is an absolute waste of time and money. I know
And a huge waste of money from the party that keeps talking about how fiscally responsible they are.
exactly.
Yeah.
Insanity.
And you've also got what was the other one that I found the other this morning? There was just a bill that defines gender as only two sexes.
Right.
Talk
Yeah,
to me
that's
about
the
that
one
one,
that's
because
being pushed through. So that's one I feel a little bit powerless against right now because I know ultimately they're just going to keep pushing it through. That's been their like goal for a long time. Unfortunately, they even did it with the trans gender affirming healthcare for minors, and like the governor passed it through, and now they're being sued, right? Now it's being held, that particular ban, but like that's not going to stop them from, unfortunately, just rolling out this stuff until they're just sued.
Do
Yeah.
you think that there's like other than the hardcore Christian messaging of these anti-trans bills, do you think that there's like kind of an insidious money angle where you've got the people behind the bills work for insurance companies and kind of understand that like offering lifelong hormone therapy is an expense to their employer, and maybe that's
Right.
why they don't want this bill to be really
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And they're even trying to I saw another bill that they're trying to pass through now that bans public funds at all going to gender affirming care, which that's going to impact a lot of very specific nonprofits here, in my opinion. And like, so it's just become this domino effect of like, oh, now we can just treat the queers however we want. Let's see how far we can push it. Like, let's just go a little farther. And I'm just like, it's yeah, it's insanity to watch, honestly. But yeah, the money angle definitely is there. And yeah.
What tipped me off about that was stuff actually going on in like the atheist community. Like there's certain right-wing atheist groups that have become staunchly anti-trans, and it occurred to me that some of the people who are part of those organizations actually work in insurance, and that was what kind of made me go like, I wonder if there's a thing there.
Right. I mean, yeah, it makes sense, especially because they're trying to ban that from being like Medicaid funded or anything like that. So like a child on Medicaid couldn't receive gender affirming care, like that sort of thing. So that's definitely there.
Which
for
makes
sure.
it a class thing, because then it's like, oh, if you got private insurance, then you can be trans. But
yep.
Yeah.
Which for people in Idaho especially, it's not looking good. Like as for it's just not in regards to access to care.
Right. And has there been, I mean, you talk about people from California moving to Idaho because of the whole readout thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any like move leftward on any issues for as those people move in, or are they just this is just Northern California redwood country?
Yeah, it's basically the Republican. They call themselves refugees. They call themselves that because they're basically Republican refugees, and I'm like, but then they get mad as they witness the deterioration of services and like public lands and stuff, and it's like, this is what you signed up for, my dudes. Let's go. Like, unfortunately, like it's absolutely.
Yeah, but private corporation that handles road construction. That's ridiculous. In California, we would do it through the state. Here we have private corporations that are funded through the state to take care of all of our transportation department's duties. And they're like, this is ridiculous.
Maybe if you moved some of your Marin County money into the tax coffers.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what else is going on in Iowa or Idaho. I need to know. I keep doing that. I know. I'm mad about that.
Well, our friends in Iowa are badass, though, with all of their goings on and all of the person who destroyed their, I don't even want to use his name because he's a clout chasing SOB, in my opinion. The person who destroyed their holiday display got charged with a hate crime, which is well freaking deserved, like, in my opinion. Hopefully that sticks.
Yeah, and he is just some carpetbagging weirdo from, where was he, Texas or?
I think it was Mississippi.
Yeah.
He was trying to run for office.
He drove a long way just to
That shows
Smack up
intent
a-
right there. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Like, like he had clear and obvious intent to do what he did, knowing
Yeah.
that they had a holiday display up. It's absolutely crazy. And now they're dealing with the public display bill being presented in their state, and it's got to be
Yeah, they've
very
got one
stressful.
like us. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, there's still pride festivals and stuff up there, right? Like, it's not, that hasn't, like, I understand that, like, things are tense, but it hasn't killed the spirit of, like, the LGBT community up there or anything, has it?
I'll be honest. A lot of my LGBTQ friends have moved. A lot of our friends have moved to Portland, Seattle. There's a mass exodus going on in Idaho of people that are genuinely afraid for their lives, and it's not unwarranted either. But what we see every single day, I mean, part of my job, I mean, Rowan is instigator in Satanic Idaho, like goes out there, pushes buttons, knows how to get in their faces, everything else. Like my job always has been and always will be like security, like making sure we're going to be safe, everything like that. And I'm in the forums with Patriot Front and White Lives Matter, and I see the things that they post, and I've seen what they're planning on doing, and I can't fault anybody for wanting to get away. But then again, like if the shit does hit the
What do
fan,
you
this
think
isn't-
of? What do you think of kind of like there's that weird counter narrative that Patriot Front is just like a Fed psyop?
It's not true.
Right.
I
It's so
agree.
It's not true.
I saw those dudes outside SatanCon last year.
right.
It was no joke.
I mean,
Right.
we'd be naive to think that there isn't feds amongst them. You know what I mean? By now, the feds have already put somebody in there who's acting like they're the most hardcore Patriot Front member for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, for what I've seen, like they did a White Lives Matter Day of Action. They came through Boise and did banner drops on the freeway. And we actually had one of our friends go and steal one of the banners, and then another activist group here in town got one of the other banners, and then the cops got the third one before I could get there. Like I got pictures of them removing it. But we ended up having a ritual with the banner and destroying the banner and raising money for Idaho abortion rights. Like, what was it, like $900 or something we raised, I believe, for Idaho abortion rights. But when we destroyed that banner, the people that came out of the woodworks with messages on X, on Telegram, Discord, I mean, you name it, it was pretty eye-opening to see, like, these aren't like, when I was growing up, like I'm in my early 40s, like growing up in Arizona, it was usually people that got out of the joint, you know what I mean? And like they would turn their nephew into like a little wannabe Heil Hitler, Adolf Hitler type kid, you know what I mean? With like the 88 written on his hat and stuff. But these kids now, like they're like, there's no other way to describe them. Like they're weird. Like they are like the incel. I sit on the computer all day long. We had a kid with brass knuckles and like a Japanimation kitten on his shirt, hanging out with a bunch of Nazis, and he's punching women in the face with brass knuckles at a demonstration we did here in Boise. And if I would have looked at him, like he looked like Kid Rock wearing an anime shirt. I never would have thought in a million years like that would be the Nazi that I need to be worried about storming into my house and burning it down in the middle of the night.
Right.
You know, and these kids, the things that they're posting, I mean, it's scary times around here. I'm not going to lie. Like I've lived here most of my life. The only other place I lived was in Arizona. And I saw some stuff in Arizona that I thought was the most hardcore thing I've ever seen. And the things that they're planning on doing and the things that they have been doing here locally in Idaho forever changed my mind. Like I'm at a crossroads in life. Like what do we do? I can't vote this problem away. You know what I mean? I can't run away from the problem because it feels like once I go somewhere else, this
is a particularly like Western United States problem where it doesn't get the media attention that everything east of the Mississippi does, because it's just not in that Boswash Peninsula, Boswash megalopolis kind of area where all the media hubs are. So it's not somewhere between DC and Boston, and it's not in California. So nobody hears about it because it just doesn't make the news.
It's a battle of ideals, right? Like at least like Civil War 1.0, like we knew that like slavery was bad. North versus South. No, you cotton farmers can't have slaves. But now we've gotten to a point where this is your neighbor might have a different political viewpoint than you. That puts you in the crosshairs. I mean, you have to get through a town of like zombies basically, but they're not really zombies. They're just people that have a different political belief than you. And they've
been kind of shoehorned into this social media funnel where they're convinced that everybody thinks the same as them.
But we did have kind of a small win with they were trying to repeal the Blaine Amendment here, and which I'm sure you're already familiar with the Blaine Amendment, but for anybody watching, the Blaine Amendment basically has something to do with public funds being used for religious or sectarian orgs. And like schools, really anything that's considered like a religious org. And
So like a
there
voucher
were
program thing.
right. It's
Seems
basically to pave the way to do that in a wider way. Like it's the floodgate, so to speak, to funding like weird Christian schools and calling them charter schools, and you know what I mean, like all sorts of asinine things. So I had a few friends reach out to me on Signal, and they were like, "You should testify against this." And then I was talking to Hans about it, and talking to Hans about it, he actually kind of came up with the idea of like, you should testify for it and testify for Satanic Idaho and tell them we'll just open up a school or something and see how they feel about that. And I'm like, yeah, like a performing arts school would be kind of cool, actually. And totally up my alley.
I did watch your testimony in that. I thought it was really cool that you were just like, yeah, sure, let's go. Well, we'll start.
Right.
If you want to make this. However, I will say that, like, in terms of the whole charter school situation, like Arizona has been a ridiculous test case in that, in so far as we started this charter school thing, we did the voucher thing, and it cost way more money than anyone thought it would. Like, if you really want to hit conservatives in their fiscal pocketbook, point to Arizona and say they did it, and it cost like twice what they said it would cost, and it's costing the state a whole bunch of money that we didn't need to spend in the first place, and our public schools are worse. So like it's just been a terrible program all around. And if you're actually like conservative minded in the sense that you want to save this, like stop the state from spending money, it's entirely the wrong way to go. Unless your real objective is just to funnel money into religious programs.
Right. And you know what? Like, I could maybe, like, I guess the word would be sincerely support being able to support religious, like, organizations with public funds if it weren't for the fact that it's just a blatant attempt to fund and discriminate and cancel out other viewpoints. You know what I mean? If their genuine intent was to be, because their argument too was that it's anti-Catholic, right? Which we can go into the history of the Blaine Amendment and how it is or isn't anti-Catholic, but at the end of the day, it protects certain organizations from taking advantage of public funds. And with a voucher system in place, definitely protects those public funds from those institutions.
Okay, so this is not something I would know off the top of my head about Idaho, but like what percentage of hospitals in the hospital system are Catholic owned
right, they're the only exception.
Do they really need that money?
Right, but they are actually like, and then it's funny that you note that, because then people are like, well, what about those hospitals? And I'm like, they're the only exception to those laws, funnily enough, which I like healthcare institutions. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I'm like, And again, like, I don't know if it was just how the infrastructure was with healthcare back then, but I don't. It's odd. It's very odd.
There's still towns in Idaho where they're like Riggins, Idaho. It's like a big whitewater town. It's on the Salmon River. There's a lottery to be able to float the Salmon River. Like you have, like the whole world puts into this lottery so they can come float the largest undammed river in the United States. Riggins doesn't even have a hospital. The closest hospital is like 60 miles away in McCall. They have a veterinarian. Like if you get hurt in Riggins, like whitewater rafting, they have the veterinarian come over to the bar and help you out, bro. Like, put some salt on it.
That's brutal.
We hate listening to a lot of like Republican radio here because, I mean, we don't have Democratic radio that we can call into. So we like to troll the
Right.
Republican radio shows here, and listening to the Republican radio shows, I can't help but like the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is what gets me the most. Like here you have people, I have to listen to callers call into this radio show talking about how, hey, they hate the fact that a family can go buy steak with their food stamp card, but also on the other hand, applaud a family that wants to take their kid to Disneyland off of our tax dollars because they're homeschooled. Like that's part of the voucher program too. Like I've seen videos of parents taking their entire families to Disneyland because they got $14,000 a kid when they took them out of public school and went into homeschooling.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's one of the things that's become apparent in the numbers in Arizona as that program has gotten older, is that like, you know, something like 80% of the families that benefited from the voucher credit were already had their kids in private school anyway, already had the money to pay for it, and now they're just getting a credit.
Right.
And meanwhile, the public school kids are suffering. Yeah,
This is how schools end up putting toilet paper and Kleenex on supply lists for kids. You know.
Yeah, when the teachers ask for like stuff to help out, sure. Yeah, and this is not purely a West Coast thing. Like I have friends who are teachers in Virginia who are just like, yeah, I spend money out of my pocket on my kids because I have to. Like this is not the attack on public education is a huge problem, and the attack happens because it's secularized, and they really, really, really want it to be religious indoctrination.
Right. Yeah, there was an argument being made that they already fund satanic schools. Those are government schools. And I'm like, really? You fucking basic little chud. Like, oh my goodness. Like,
well, yeah, because anything that's not Jesus is Satan, right?
Right, exactly. And that's also what we've been like, because we've been able to build relationships with like more progressive minded churches, like Christian groups, etc. And like we've been able to talk to them about how like at the end of the day, satanic organizations that are being publicly out there are protecting you as well, because these people don't think that your views are Christianity. They consider you just as satanic, if not more. Some of them, there was a hate preacher that we were protesting against, and he told a woman that was actually trying to stop us from protesting against her, but it turned out she wasn't the same flavor of Christianity. Surprise. And he said on his little online sermon, he was like, and she's almost worse than the Satanists, because at least they're out there saying what they are, but she's masquerading and saying she's a Christian and like all of this. So at the end of the day, I'm trying to explain to my friends, like they're going to other you too. Like they're going to turn that little difference of your belief system into the absolute like particle of your othering. If you are a queer Christian, no, you are not. You are a queer operative of Satan who's claiming they're a Christian.
If your church is okay with you being gay, it must be evil and
right.
corrupted, and yeah.
Right. And it's awful to witness, because so thankfully that's kind of how we've been able to build the relationships that we have, because at the end of the day, like they understand who we are. They understand that we're going to do things that might offend their sensibilities, but they know that they offend legislators of sensibilities by being being progressive, right? So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think by and large, in terms of left of center religious organizations in of the Christian and Jewish variety, like
right.
they don't seem to have much of a problem. Like once you sit down and talk to them and say this is what we think, like
right.
they kind of get it. Like even some left of center Catholic organizations, you can sit down and be like, because Catholics were always pretty good at education. You sit down and you say, all right, let's talk about Milton and Paradise Lost, and you can understand where I'm coming from because you've read a book or two.
Right.
But
exactly.
yeah. And I think that they can at least wrap their brain around it once you have a conversation with them. But these far right, evangelical Christians just do not want to hear anything other than what they were raised to believe.
Right. And when we were protesting against Sean Foy in that was July, last year in July, he decided to come to town on his Kingdom to the Capitol tour, and we basically wrecked his entire time there, which I found very enjoyable. We ended up reserving a city park that they had to use basically to have their event, and because it had all of the shaded nice areas, the benches, all of that. So I reserved that entire thing and made him literally just use the Capitol grounds property, which is not very much. You can, yeah,
so
you can
allowed
maybe
to use the steps and the sidewalk out front.
Right.
He wasn't allowed to use the steps because Rowan worked with Idaho Abortion Rights and reserved the steps all the way up until he took the stage at 2:00. So they sat in the sun and held space talking shit with a megaphone to Sean Foyt's crew. And then Sean Foyt came himself, and everybody talked shit to Sean Foyt, and we made them sit in the street with their equipment until 2:00 exactly.
He's the kind of I don't know how to describe him.
Ramen shaman.
He was hanging out with Marjorie Taylor Greene for a bit, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, he hangs out with our legislators all the time.
It's kind of like an overfed, undertalented Tim Minchin.
right.
Yeah.
But we know from experience you're not allowed to have amplified devices in the street. So then when he went to go try to set up, he tried to put all of his speakers in the street and utilize the park directly across the street. And he's not allowed to have amplified devices. So we complained to the cops, told the cops he has amplified devices in the street. So the cops made him put his amplified devices on the steps. He had no room for his stage. He couldn't put his baptism dunk tanks that he has. And the people,
and that's why he has nothing from that on his social media, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. He was mad. It was 110 degrees outside.
Yeah, it was so
He
hot.
left people out there with no water. There were people having heat strokes, and he got in his bus and just left. We were sitting there giving people water and everything. And he actually coordinated with one of our local hate groups, the Idaho Liberty Dogs, to come over and assault a woman of color that they always target. Every single event that anybody does, they always target the same woman of color. And they went over and sparked a fight with her. And then he immediately ran to Turning Point and Charlie Kirk, and they were posting saying, "Oh, Satanists started a fight, blah, blah, blah." And we have the whole thing on video. The lawyers have it because we're waiting until our friends, the charges that were pressed against them are dropped with this video. But we have the video of the entire confrontation. You can see Sean Foyt's people seriously walk over to this hate group and start high-fiving them because they walked over and started a fight with somebody. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah, he coordinates with these far-right groups and has these little far-right Christian, there was one dude who was purposely going up to my friends that were on the sidewalk with signs, and they just had signs that were pro-abortion rights, pro-queer rights, and this dude went up to my one friend and he was like, "Are you a boy or a girl? Or are you, purposely antagonizing him?" Yeah, and all of this crazy stuff, and I was like, "You know what? You have fun roasting in the sun over there, my friend. God seemed it fit to provide us with the shade today. So why don't you just go sit over there?" And he was like, "I'm not hot. It's not hot." And then someone sent me a clip of his live stream when he went after the encounter, and he was like, "So hot." And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Is there
on Twitter trolling him?
that whole I wish people would realize the connections, because honestly Sean Foyt has been on my radar for a while because Turning Point USA loves him. That the only reason why his events even happen is because of them, and they're the conservative think tank lobbyist thing, all of that. Yeah. But yes, they have a specific offshoot.
Alliance Defending Freedom money coming in because they and this I don't think people really appreciate how asymmetric this issue really is, without looking at actual numbers. You look at ADF, they bring in something like 60 million a year into their coffers, and we're here with, I don't know what TST's numbers are, but it's
Right.
not that big. Certainly.
No.
And you look at us other smaller people just doing our own thing. Like there's no way,
Right.
And like watching Project Blitz back in the day, like I wish we were still worried about Project Blitz, like what they got going on.
Yeah, well, this Project 2025 stuff is
Right.
way worse. Yeah.
Yep. Like this is crazy.
Yeah. Well, a plug for anybody who's watching this: if you go on to my Patreon and my shop section, there is a 1,200-page activist guide for secularists that you can go get for like $5. Check it out; it's worth it.
Right. It's time. Like, people need to speak out, even if it is like, I don't know. I don't want to say just as an atheist, because in certain areas, again, being an atheist is just as othering as being, a Satanist in a lot of ways.
They don't see the difference.
Right.
Yeah.
So but I can't stress how important it is enough that like, if this is your skill set, if this is your to be out there, if you're well spoken, if you're not afraid of going and testifying, like if you have some sort of privilege that protects you from you even, but you know what I mean? Like I'm pretty privileged enough to have a job that doesn't care about me being an open Satanist, but I know a lot of people aren't in that position. Like it's just, even written testimony helps, or supporting organizations that will, you know what I mean? Freedom from Religion Foundation is one that I really appreciate too, personally. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it can't just be all lawsuits and waiting for somebody else to do something. Right. Like there's got to be a, mechanism for everybody being like, look, if this is what you think, don't be afraid about starting that fight on Thanksgiving dinner. That's Thanksgiving dinner. If you have with, and that's a tough thing to do.
It can't be just purely reactionary. That's why I do appreciate people out there even building, quote, the culture of Satanism, right? Because that's just as important to this fight, in my opinion. Having that, being able to show people, listen, Satanism is a nuanced, complicated, beautiful web of philosophies, ideas, aesthetic, values, and the more we can build upon that in a positive way, the better, whether it's through music, art, like this
and
podcast, all of that. It's great.
I think just trying to break through the narrative, right? Because it's always been, trans people are groomers and that kind of thing. When every time there's somebody who gets caught doing something wrong with a kid, it's always a Christian pastor,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually there's just got to be a mountain of evidence that you can just pile through all that and just break through their cognitive dissonance on that issue.
Exactly. It's something I feel very passionate about, because at the end of the day, these people are not going to pause. They're not going to, especially as they feel more emboldened and more empowered to do these things. They're not pausing for anybody. They're going to keep going.
They don't have to, because they're better funded.
Right? Exactly.
A lot of this goes back to, what was the Supreme Court? The Hobby Lobby decision, where now all these churches donate to these, nonprofits that then fund these people to go out and do this stuff. Right. And the fact of the matter is, if you're a member of a Christian church and your church is donating money that you're putting in to the collection plate that is then going to do this stuff, whatever your personal opinions are on the subject, that money's still going to fund stuff like hate.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do have a little bit of, hope for the future. I think more and more people are starting to see the threads, so to speak, and starting to unravel it a little bit. And I thought it was cool that Bradley Onishi mentioned me on his podcast last week. He's an author for a few books. One of them is, let me look up the exact title, Preparing for War, like the threat of oncoming Christian nationalism. He's he's a religion professor.
Was a Christian nationalist.
He was also a self-identified Christian nationalist. So like, just a very interesting thinker and has an interesting perspective on what's going on. But
Idaho.
Right, I would recommend that book and his work in general, Bradley Onishi. But I don't know if you've read him, Jack.
I haven't, but he's a former Christian nationalist that has kind of turned the corner and been disillusioned with
right
the kind of cult mentality of it, and
which I love that. I'm all for a reformed Christian nationalist that's out there using their platform to warn people like this is bullshit, like you need to fight against it. Like
there's this weird idea that just because Satanism is what it is, that it is inherently opposed to all these other ideologies, and it's just no, that's I had a Reformed Jewish rabbi on the show not too long ago, and we had a great talk. He's a really nice guy. Sure, we disagree on some stuff like metaphysically or whatever, but we saw eye to eye on the stuff that matters. I think we're just arguing about symbolism, but
exactly. At the end of the day, I feel like it's about aesthetics for people. Like you just don't like the aesthetics of Satanism, which okay, cool. Then it's not for you. It's not my prerogative to push it on you either.
But if you're gonna push your thing in
then I'm gonna probably push a little.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which and I guess like an upcoming thing that we're gonna do is two things. February 14th, we're gonna do a talk in our Capitol building. And I've invited the legislatures to come talk with us about Christian nationalism and how it's unconstitutional, basically. So that should be interesting. We'll see what happens. And then
after that, I did the one on groups and supremacy, Christian nationalism.
So we're trying to be more in the capital space and make ourselves a little bit more known on. And honestly, it's not even about Satanism for me. It's just that what you're doing is unconstitutional. Stop it. And if you want to actually talk to a constituent about this, here I am. I have made it extremely easy for you. So let's go. And then Easter is on March 31st and falls on Trans Day of Visibility. So last year, for context, a few far-right groups took all of the Capitol space on Trans Day of Visibility. Purposely. And turned it into day of gender, child, against childhood gender mutilation. And so this year I took the reservation for the whole day.
I meant to bring this up before when you talked about the way that they started this whole thing as an anti-Sharia, anti-gender mutilation thing.
Right.
Where are these same people at with circumcision? It seems like
exactly, which is a point that many have brought up, and they're just oh, and then ironically enough, I think they've even said, well, that falls under RFRA. Idaho is very interesting because we also have a law protecting parents against charges if their child dies due to faith healing. So let's say you prayed over Timmy who had pneumonia and he happens to die because you didn't take him to the doctor.
Right.
Yeah. They'll get out of the medical neglect charge, basically.
They'll create panic over third trimester abortions that don't happen, but yet go ahead and pull a 20th trimester abortion on their 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Right.
There's literally like a whole graveyard full of kids that have died due to the faith healing laws that we have, and their parents haven't faced any consequences for it. So for me, like, Idaho is a very interesting state in that you claim you're for this thing and you've shown you are for this thing in very bizarre ways, like letting your child die because like you're going to pray over them, and you know what I mean? That's bizarre to me.
The two things don't add up, right? Like
Right.
either you have this ideological opinion that your child is your property and you can do whatever you want to them,
Right.
or you're against, doing bad things to kids, even if it's the parents doing it, right?
Right.
And I imagine there's got to be some sort of like, CPS like situation.
They're trying to limit the reach of CPS during this session too, which is, I'm like, oh gosh, they want to be able to force CPS workers to read Miranda rights to people, or there's like a lot of very strange, I think it's basically the legislator that introduced this stuff is very pro-religious homeschool and like doesn't like any sort of religious, like doesn't like any sort of oversight. And so for him, he wants to be able to protect these homeschool families and tell them, you can just tell CPS to fuck you. So like they're setting it up.
I can have the same people who these, they're worried about what, Satanists are doing out in public, but at the same time, Satanists who are all big fans of horror movies look at like, oh, well, what happens when you have a sheltered kid who's been homeschooled in a rural area and never met another person, and we're all like, yeah, that's how you get Leatherface.
Right. Like, you're creating the problem. Cut it out.
And just for reference, like how like far left field they're going right now. Today, like when we were talking earlier about the cannibalism thing. So Heather Scott, when she introduced the bill today, apparently said that she had saw a video online of a cooking show where the contestants were fed human sausage, and that video really scared her, and she doesn't want that to become the norm. So she's introducing this cannibalism bill, and she's going to be the one to stand up against cannibalism and Satanism. Have you ever seen this video before, Jack?
I haven't seen this video, but I produced the Satanic Chef's holiday special once, where he made a vegan sacrifice.
Right?
I know.
I don't understand where this is coming from.
I know the exact video that she's referencing. I've seen it on TikTok 100 times, and do you know what it is? It's a clip from David Spade's prank show. It's an actual TV show. Even says at the end of the video, you're just being pranked. You're on David Spade's prank show. We have legislators that are seeing these videos on the internet and creating legislation to rule over millions of people, and it's a prank off the internet. Like I don't know how much more like infuriating I can tell people that they need to be about this. Like
like everybody along the line, they should have a staffer whose job it is to be like, that's not real.
That's crazy. That's crazy. It's just as crazy as QAnon saying that we're drinking adrenochrome because some asshole watched Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas 20 years ago. Like it's beyond comprehension to me anymore. Like this is insanity.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think in this age of information being widely available to everyone that somebody would at least do some basic fact checking. But
right,
not
media literacy is lacking.
Oh, believe me, I know. Well, that was the thing this morning with the thing in Arizona. The dude's up there being like, Satanism is not a real religion, whatever. And I'm sitting here being like, I covered the case in Scottsdale where the judge in Arizona said Satanism is a real religion, like reaffirmed the IRS decision. And I'm like, I was there. It It was right across the street from where you're sitting, man. Like, stop.
Right. Like, you're making an ass out of yourself at this point, for real. And I love how he was trying to, I remember, because I watched it, he was trying to stop one person from testifying, like, mid-testimony, which, wow.
That was Oliver. He called Oliver out for saying that he was a minister and representing the congregation, because he is. He's our congregation head for the state.
The lobbyist thing, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, you're a lobbyist then. I'm not a lobbyist, I'm a minister.
Right.
Like,
and then I think he stopped someone who, I forgot her name too. She was talking about, that she's free to practice her religion however she wants. And he stopped her and he was like, just to clarify, this isn't impeding you from practicing whatever religion or free speech just on public property. And I'm thinking, if you allow any religious displays on that public property and you are excluding a specific religion, you are absolutely impeding on that person's First Amendment right. Like, that's, you need to ban all of it. Then
he was trying to split some hairs and saying, well, we're not stopping anyone from practicing the religion. We're just banning displays,
right?
Which seems to me like there's they've got something that they're cooking up that they want to put. It's going to be like a holiday display thing, or it's going to be. There's already a 10 Commandments on outside the Arizona Capitol in
right.
kind of like a what is it? There's like a monument park, which is why Arizona gets away, because it's amongst a whole bunch of other stuff,
Right.
And that's fine. But like, nobody from TST Arizona has ever asked to put a Baphomet up in that park.
Right.
It's not like it's ever come up before. So they're doing this weird thing where they're just worried. And
right.
To me, that says, well, if you're worried, that's good, because we've been doing this long enough now that if you're still nervous, then we're making progress.
Right.
Got a whole campaign for that shit now.
Not only that, is QAnon Shaman going to be excluded from making his religious? I just saw him in a video at the Arizona State Capitol. He was there, like, in front of the building and was like, I'm going to do this, like, power ritual to, like, call. It was really weird. Do you remember?
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm generally surprised that after January 6th that he didn't get, like, mandatory therapy or something. I don't know what went on with that guy.
He's running as a senator in your state now, isn't he?
Isn't he running as a senator?
Is he running for state senator? Probably.
Yeah, in Arizona.
I mean, whether obviously he gets any support or track for him, but
you're saying that we just have to shove our feet in our mouth.
Right. Well, things are a little different because okay, so we both have situations where our state legislatures are heavily controlled by right-wing crazy people, but. Ours, they've run into a lot of problems lately. They've kind of devolved into infighting. They've lost a bunch of fundraising opportunities. I think that what's going on here is that they're panicked. Like, they see the writing on the wall. Like, they've been saying, I've been here since 2006, and the whole time I've been here, they've always had this charge of, stop trying to California my Arizona and don't want to move left. But the population has doubled since then, and there's all these reasons that Arizona is moving kind of leftward.
Right.
And I'm hard pressed to see. I think they see the writing on the wall now, and they're kind of got that cornered animal panic going on.
Right.
And so we'll see what happens this cycle. But I don't know. Things look good. Like, I feel cautiously optimistic that Arizona might flip blue.
Right. I mean, because they legalized weed in Arizona, so that's a plus, I suppose. Didn't they?
That doesn't hurt. That doesn't hurt. But even then, the conservative wing of our politics, like, because they did that, and then there was this whole structure where all these dispensaries are cash only, and they're paying their taxes, but like there's a huge pile of money that the dispensaries have paid in taxes that they refuse to spend on anything.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
It's nuts. There's like an $80 million that they could just dump right into this problematic school system situation.
Right.
Because they refuse to appropriate the money. and it's so awfully partisan. Like last session, they did 160 bills or whatever, and like 3 of them were Democrat bills. And the rest is just party line crap. And that's what they're doing now with this ban Satan stuff. They've got another bill that is just a ridiculous list of woke stuff that they're not allowed to. They're just like, basically, any of these things, we're not allowed to spend public money on promoting. But it's like public transportation over cars. And you're like, you pay city planners, man. That's their job.
No. Like,
no.
it's awful.
Yeah, so this goes way beyond just pure freedom of speech and freedom of religion issues, and it's a cult out here.
Mm-hmm. It's brutal. People need to stop drinking that communion wine or something. I feel like that's what's going on. Like, it's got something in it, or I don't know. You can't handle it. Let's put it down.
Yeah. All right. So you've got a fun thing coming up on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
That you just mentioned.
Yep.
And this will come out around then. So everybody, go check out Satanic Idaho's media stuff and find that, because it's going to be interesting.
For sure. We're on X and Facebook primarily right now, and then we both have independent personal Twitters. So yeah, under both of our names. So
Hans, not Christian Anderson on X.
Nice. All right, Hans and Rowan, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
It was good seeing you.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't be the last time. Talk more later.
I want everyone out there to stay safe too. Like,
yeah,
we are a big ass family, whether we all like each other or not. But still, like, I hope everyone stays safe, because these people are fucking crazy.